more data, or they had a little bit more data than they're sharing in the show. You know, they had more than just their body weight to go off of. And same thing with Nikki when she got pulled. You know, there might have been something in her vitals that was, raising a red flag for the medics that we just don't know about. Nikki would probably know about it, but I don't know. I haven't had to go through that yet, so um, it's hard to say. But he was in a bad way, and you could tell things were starting to wind down. And I'd seen that in myself at different points during the show too, when I'm just exhausted and I practically slurring my speech because I just don't have the energy to even talk. Um, it's a hard place to be in when you can just go, bing, come and get me, everybody. Haul me out of here with a helicopter and hook me up. So, yeah, dehydration, starvation, physical exhaustion. At some point, you have got to release some of that, and Barry does. He doesn't say, let me win or anything. He says, put the fight back into me. He still is out there to kick some ass, and uh, my hat's off to that guy. He's just tough as hell. Um, Shoots to me again, probably a few nights or maybe a week after the initial time of showing me put rocks underneath my bed. Um, Eventually, the floor did catch fire. It wasn't flames, but it was smoldering like a cigarette underneath my bed, and it did it all night long. I could smell it. Um, so, which ended up being really great for me because my fire went out that night. I didn't wake up at that 30-minute interval or something, and my fire went out. And luckily, I still had one going in my floor. So I dug out little chunks of moss that were still smoldering a little bit, and put them in a pile of coals and blew it to life and had a fire going. And that's pretty much how I built my fire every single day. I kind of wish they had covered that a little better, but I had a pair of little tongs that I made like day 3 that I would grab little embers from the fire and let's see if I can make something really quick here. I would grab little embers from the fire and pick them up and then transport them to a coal. Well, I'm not going to deal with that right now, but I could transport them to a pile of coals and then let them incubate in there for a while so that the heat could grow out into the coals, and eventually the the flame and everything would. Yeah, I basically just build the thing and let it go, and then go off and do something. And about 5 minutes later, almost 5 minutes later, every time it would poof to life. The flames would kick up, and the tinder that I put on it would ignite, and then I had my fire back. So that's exactly what I had done almost every single morning, and that's what I did to use my floor to relight my fire that night. Um, that was a really, really significant thing to have had happen for me, even though it burned out my floor. What I ended up doing after that is I realized I needed to line the floor with rocks so that I could continue doing that, and that's exactly what I did. I dug out all of the rest of the sphagnum that was underneath there that I could, to make more space, because I only had about that much room under my bed, and I didn't want the rocks to be any closer to my mattress because they would catch my mattress on fire right below my back. And so what I did was I dug it down a little bit more, and then I lined it all with rocks so those hot rocks could go in there on top of other rocks because they were glowing red and not being in contact with anything that could smolder. And it ended up working out pretty well. Um, let's see, where am I at? I'm out on the ice, chopping it with my axe, and because my net on its pole had to go in at an angle, and because the water where I was at was only about 4 or 5 feet deep and the pole was about 14 feet long, I had to cut a channel rather than just a single hole. I had to cut a long channel that ended up being the same length as the barrel that I had, so that I could put it at an angle. Otherwise, the tip of my pole would just bury in the mud, and then I wouldn't be able to deploy it all the way. So I had to do a good deal more chopping than just a hole bigger than big enough to pull a fish out of. And then that thing would freeze up again, and then I'd have to chop it out, and then all of a sudden I'm chopping really close to the lines of my net. and I ended up cutting it one time. I'm able to repair it, but that becomes a problem later on. Um, Back to what I was talking about, Barry just having this really kind of faded, trickling voice. I was able to recognize the way I'm talking and the way my own mannerisms are, and I still feel like I've got some energy and vitality in me. And at that point, I definitely did. I was very skinny. I didn't have body fat on me anymore, but I had some light in my eyes still, and I did not have any. I didn't have any quit in me to put it, the way Barry did. Um, I was out there for the long haul still, and uh, yeah, and it showed, I thought. Jordan, that's looking at his scalp in the camera, and trying to see if his hair is thinning out or nothing or something like that. I went through something similar when I got out and noticed that I had probably 50, 60, 70 new gray hairs that I didn't have going in, and that my eyebrows went from their normal dark brown to an ashen color. And it wasn't like my eyebrows had turned gray. They went back to their normal color after a few months, and actually I lost quite a few of those gray hairs as well, but not all of them. I don't think I had the nutrition in me to create pigment for my hair, for my eyebrows, and they turned an ashen gray color. It was very weird. I can't remember if my eyelashes did the same thing too or not, but like I said, it took months for my eyebrow color to return to normal. I was really curious about how the net did work out. I had problems with mine freezing. I wanted to know how it came out, whether he had some of the same problems. You kind of see him digging down into that hole and wrestling with something, and I'm guessing that his net was probably hung up. I think typically, commercial people who do ice net fishing, they check it after only a few hours, and we were having to leave ours out overnight. So, because the days were so short, the nights were extremely long too. So I imagine he probably had some issues with that as well. But he still catches a fish, so that's great. Wonia cuts back to her again. She's losing 1.5 pounds a day, catches 3 squirrels, and makes a comment about how it's time for a woman to win this. And I could not agree more. If you add up the number of days that the average woman has lasted on the show, and the number of days that the average man has lasted on the show, I don't know what it is now after season 6, but a friend of mine had done this last year. The women are beating us. The women are definitely lasting longer than the men on average, and that should hopefully be reflected someday in a woman winning the season, because women are kicking butt out there. It's not about how manly you are. It's about how tough you are, and I have a lot of very tough women in my life, always have, and I'd say, women aren't just tougher on that show; they're tougher in general. And they just, I gotta hand it to them, and I'm hoping for the day that I see a woman win the Alone show, because it's a long time coming. If they put equal number of women out there as they do men, I think it would have happened already. There is unfortunately a resistance from the show to do that. I think the best person should win, and whoever gets on the show should do so as their skill, not to do with their sex or their age or their color or anything like that. But they are trying to fill a certain demographic, the correct number of these people, the people from the military, people of color, all that stuff. And I don't agree with that. And I'm the 40-year-old white male. I'm the one who benefits from that more than anybody. I don't think it's right. So hopefully we have seasons where the demographics of the group meet the demographics of the average person who's applying for it, and of the country. So Barry's really hurting. It comes back around to Barry. He's out there for his family 100%, and I had some thoughts about his need to help his family. This is a way of him showing his love for his family. His need to do that is greater than his need for life, greater than his need for food, for water, for warmth, for the things that we all take for granted. That's rooted, his family is rooted deeper in him than those basic things of life. It's rooted deep. I don't know that most people have that. I don't know that most people even run that deep at all, that anything's rooted in them that deep. I was really impressed. And just the thought of how deeply a thing is anchored in me, how deeply a particular need is anchored in me, and what's going to take priority when it comes down to it. My own experience with missing Natalie, my partner, when I was out there was all-consuming. She was with me all the time in my mind, and I worked a lot to not obsess on it, to not talk about it. I didn't take a picture of her out there as my one personal photo because I knew it would be the hardest thing for me is to be away from her. And I needed to set that aside and come back to it when I could see her again. It was absolutely hard though. I was in a funk for up to a week at a time sometimes, missing her so bad and thinking I was going to get to go home and see her again. And somehow that got translated, as it did for Barry, I think, in my being out there was a representation of my love for my loved ones. For Natalie especially, but also for my community who had shown so much support in me and what I was going to do, even though a lot of them didn't have a clue what I was actually going to do. They just knew I was going to go do something wild. I had never been so supported in my life, and that's what I came out there with, was the most support I've ever had in my entire life. And that translated immediately into a strength for me, and I think for Barry as well. Barry lost 80 pounds. I know how much Barry weighed before me, or over me, before we went out. We all got weighed at pretty much the same time, I think the day before we left, or maybe even the morning of. And he had about 44 pounds on me. He's a taller guy than I am. He's just a big, heavy-built guy. And he had 44 pounds on me. And to lose 80 pounds, even at that weight, I don't know. I think Fowler, season 3, might have lost. I think he lost 76 pounds. So Barry lost more weight than I think anybody's ever been on the show. That's pretty insane. He just didn't have the food resources, and his mind was stronger and his heart was stronger than his body was. He was willing to take himself beyond what the physical realm could support anymore. And I'm getting goosebumps right now, just transporting myself back to that time when I was making similar decisions. And it's a very odd place to put yourself in. And I think one in many thousands of modern humans has to even think about it once in their life to push yourself that hard. It's an interesting place to be in, and I don't think most people are strong enough to even go there, let alone come out the other end. So episode 10, man, heavy as can be. Episode 11, the finale. I am really looking to see how it goes. Really excited to see it. I'm going to watch it with as many friends as I can at the local bar here, and I hope they all can come. But, I feel for everybody who's out there, everybody who's been out there, because none of us left lightly. Sometimes it was a medical pull, sometimes it was fear or just loss of family, whatever. Nobody went home without having some deep stuff happen and a fair amount of suffering and torture. So, I really hope you're able to see episode 11, and I will have a video out soon after that, and after I share the experience with all my loved ones. And thanks for following the season so far, and thanks for watching my other videos. I really appreciate it. My name is Nathan Donnelly. This is Northwest Resilience, and I have other videos for previous episodes to this, and I'm doing videos on gear that I used, on methods that I used, techniques, skills that I had, and I'm also doing videos on disaster preparedness. I'm doing videos on climate change resilience, survival, and I am a teacher of those skills as well. So if you have a group of people that you would like a course taught for, or even one-on-one stuff with me to go out into the wilderness and get some hands-on knowledge, some soft skills of survival in addition to the hard skills, I'm available to do that, and you can get a hold of me through my YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and remember, feel all the good things you have in your life. They are there. Take you later.